pre-competition preparations over the last several years. Now we see that as of the mid-90s, a resurgence of that early 20th century discovery has morphed into a standardized system called the dynamic warm-up, which is a pre-performance activity similar to the motions that are attempted during competition. This should not be a dynamic stretch, as some literature professes. A stretch is still a stretch, regardless of the speed. Now, to kind of prove my point that I was just talking about with the one athlete, go ahead and have Al here saying that specific stretches may be contraindicated or harmful for certain individuals. For example, a person with a lower back injury may exacerbate that situation if they engage in excessive hamstring stretching, while another with a frozen shoulder may have trouble with moves which require placing the arms overhead. He also indicates that folks in these situations may have to progress slowly or modification being the key, some of the poses to better suit their individual needs. As he often reminds his clients, you've got to listen to your body. So pain is an indicator, right? We all know that. You know, I think there was a wise doctor that was visited by a patient one time, and the patient says, "Hey doc, it hurts when I do this." So the doctor, with all of his great wisdom, said, what did he say, guys?
Don't do that.
Don't do that, right? So silly things like that. So let's go ahead and talk about, Hoffman's reflexes, and let's talk about static versus ballistic stretches. And this has really been important for me working in strength sports and with the strength athletes. Something I've taken special note of over these last 20 years in aiding these strength athletes is the fact that not all methods may be good for every sport. I'm talking chiropractic methods. Stretching for some sports have shown to hinder the force production as seen here in these studies. Some sports, however, do well with types of stretching activities such as swimming, where the looseness of the tissue aids the athletes in gliding through the water during activity. My focus has been strength athletes, and so force generation with power has been a great concern, as there are applications that may alter these two very important components of strength. We as chiropractors don't want to cause the athletes to feel sprung, which, with that looseness, the driving force that allows the heavy lifts disappears. Even with muscle activation techniques, much of that power, once the H reflex or Hoffman's reflex has been depressed from a stretch, cannot be reintroduced without the requirement of time. If you go ahead and take a look at these couple studies running through here, it does talk about the static stretches. The static stretches can reduce leg strength, jump height, peak force in static and counter movement. Acute reduction of muscular tendinous stiffness negatively affects the isometric and concentric performance. Now, the question that I have is, did any of you guys know that? You all know that, don't you? Right? Back in the mid-90s, that was something that there was a big resurgence. How many of us in here went to school, took PE, and did stretches, static stretches? Can I see hands? Now, most of you are going to be the old guys, all righty? Because they've taken it out. And why did they take it out? They take it out in the mid-90s because of what they talk about down here, and that is the H reflex again. So if you depress the H reflex, that suggests, the depressed H reflex rather, suggests that stretching could induce an autogenic inhibition of a muscle that could also compromise force production. How many of you doctors want to try and create a reduction in force production in your athletes? None of them, right? None of you want to do that. You want your athletes to perform better, right? And as the first slide suggests in this series right here, chiropractic does do that indeed. It does. But I think also at the same time we need to consider when and which type of application that we do. And I think that's a fair statement. Let's talk about ballistic stretches now. And you can read the slide. The bounce at the end of a static stretch can actually be worse than the static stretch itself for strength athletes. Most, of course, have done the static stretches with the cross-legged toe touches, followed by a bounce, which is ballistic in its nature. And that's why I asked the guys who've been around for a little while, they did that in PE class. These types of stretches, however, can be considered detrimental. And we know that there can be such a significant change in the neuromuscular recruitment of strength sports. One can only imagine what a combination of a ballistic and static stretch could do. My experience has been and has shown that with a strength athlete, after doing a ballistic stretch combined with a static stretch, may require 24 to 72 hours before that athlete can recover from said event. That's a big deal. So again, autogenic inhibition during ballistic stretching activities has greater compromise on performance than static stretches alone. This differs from static stretch in both mechanical and neurological impacts the musculo-tendinous unit in a very negative fashion. Now many of you already know this, right? Is that a fair statement? So most of you don't do static stretches. Most of you do not do ballistic stretches. Now, if you go ahead and you do those things, you typically are going to suggest that those things are done after the athletic event. Most of the time that's going to be included in your cool down after an athletic event to go ahead and help break down maybe some of the things that are problematic in the recovery of the muscle tissue as well as the alignment. So let's look at standard chiropractic applications. This slide pretty much states what most of our colleagues in chiropractic do these days. So there's nothing wrong with that. I feel though that we haven't made too many changes in the last 70 years, and we still pay a lot of money in contemporary education, at a sum exceeding $200,000 by the time a young doctor of chiropractic walks across the stage. Actually, in a seminar this weekend, I found out that that number is even greater, or worse, however way you want to look at it. That number is anywhere from $200,000 to $350,000 by the time a young doctor walks across the stage. That's scary. That's scary. To my point, we're still using 70-year-old information. That's disconcerting. Do you realize that way back in maybe 40 years ago, consistently, Gonstead found that a short leg typically tied in with posterior inferior ilium. We in chiropractic should understand that the posture for most work activities has changed. That also affects our athletes. That affects our just regular people as well. What I've discovered is that over the course of the last 20 years of me being included in chiropractic and the studies that I've done, the primary most often is not a PI with a short leg. What I'm finding is it's in the coronal plane. It's either an IN or an EX now. It's fascinating, don't you think? So why then, if that truly is the case, as I've seen, and I've actually surveyed several of my chiropractic colleagues who happen to be Gonstead providers in many instances, who track their x-rays, and they're saying the same thing I'm saying. Why then, through the NVCE on those questions, are we still saying that a short leg is posterior inferior ilium, and that's a pass or fail point for those doctors? I'm a little concerned about our profession as a whole. And these students, are they getting 100% of what they need? So many of them don't even know how to adjust when they come to college. They're really good at maybe dry needling or rubbing something, put an electrode on something. But the core thing of chiropractic and which makes chiropractic unique and separate from everything else is the adjustment, isn't it, doctors? Isn't it supposed to be, doctors? So, as I say that, what I get blasted with on my emails so often is so many ads that claim to have products that help an adjustment stay in place. I say let's do a better adjustment. I've got athletes that compete after getting an adjustment on this table here, which sadly they say is the best adjustment they've ever received, on a table in the middle of an auditorium. How much equipment do you have in your office? Tons, right? Thousands and thousands of dollars worth of equipment. And an athlete says that makes me not proud of myself necessarily. It makes me sad for our profession and concerned for our profession. After getting off that table, most of my athletes will go ahead and go through 5 max effort events. And many times they'll go ahead and have a personal record in not just one, but often all of those max effort events. After we do an adjustment, after they have their success in their activities, we post-check them. And most of them still don't need another follow-up adjustment. That's huge. So with the experiences that I've had, and I want to share this story, because again, it was concerning back then when I was a brand new baby doctor, baby chiropractor. And I remember listening to some of the doctors while we had a technique discussion with the seminars that we had in our state. And they were talking about, short legs, and then they go ahead and they do the demonstration, and then they'd show that that leg was better. And I remember sitting in the back hearing some of the old veteran doctors kind of chuckle themselves. And they would say, well, that's all fine. He's going to go ahead and get off that table, walk around for 5 minutes, and that leg will be short again. And I really scratched my head on that. And I was saddened to think that that was okay. Why is that okay? So I set out a long time ago to try and do a better adjustment and try and figure out a way to go ahead and make it last. Isn't that what we're supposed to do in chiropractic? Isn't that what we're supposed to be taught at the schools? Back in B.J. Palmer's time, when there was a problem that couldn't be figured out in the field, do you know where that patient got sent? It's kind of like, Palmer used to be, and this isn't a Palmer advertisement, by the way, but Palmer used to be like Cleveland Clinic in its day, Mayo Clinic in its day, John Hopkins in its day, okay? That was the John Hopkins of chiropractic. So now we've got, between 15 and 20 chiropractic colleges. If you get into a jam out in the field today in chiropractic, do you send them to the chiropractic college where the latest and greatest and the most knowledgeable exist? Can I see hands? Why not? You know why, don't you? You know why. So, if the latest and greatest aren't there, is that the best place to educate a chiropractic student? Wow. Did I hear people's minds just blow? I've said it before. This profession is in trouble. We need to recruit in those colleges the absolute best and brightest doctors in the field so that we can teach our young doctors how to do things. It's great that we have seminars through the ICA, and thank God for that. But my gosh, people, think about that. And for a price tag of $200,000 to $350,000. So let's take a look here. Move on. The 3 most studied adjustive procedures in the chiropractic profession are the side posture, high velocity, low amplitude, the distraction, which is mostly flexion distraction, and mobilization, which everybody does, PTs, athletic trainers, massage therapists, etc. And these are all respectively in order. The clinical condition most commonly addressed by this included studies is low back pain. The procedure with the widest base of evidence support is the side posture manipulation for low back pain. So, again, it's a staple. The side posture application is a staple. It's used by 90% of our colleagues, okay? It does work. But there should be more that we need to evaluate within our own profession, rather than let the physical therapist do it for us. There's a study right here that says This type of review is considered the first step in the evaluation process for a chiropractic technique procedure. It demonstrates that very little has been written in an accessible fashion relative to techniques which use specific contacts on short levers while applying forces that may vary in speed and amplitude. Statements made concerning the appropriateness or effectiveness consist of opinions only, with no reference to any form of injury or testing. The need for clinical trials and studies comparing different techniques is great. It's not necessarily that the technique is bad or the technique is good. What is important is the technique appropriate for that patient or athlete? Is that a fair statement? Sure. So, it's interesting when we get in here and we talk about this stuff. And we kind of share, explain, and express. And yeah, I've got an opinion on it, obviously, right? But listen, the next few slides are going to kind of blow your mind here just a little bit, okay? And it kind of goes and then leads up to all the other things that I'm going to hit on. We're still talking about static and ballistic stretches here. The stretch science that I'm talking about has been around since its first being realized by a researcher named Hoffman in 1910. So it's not a new concept by any means. Unfortunately, though, the chiropractic profession hasn't yet done its due diligence in evaluating different applications for different sports activities, nor their diverse effects on performance. Please take special note of the photos in the slide. And again, 90% of the chiropractors, according to some sources, use side posture applications to correct subluxations of the sacrum, pelvis, and low back. There are a significant number of non-chiropractors, as I indicated, that also use this application to mobilize these same joints. As you can see with this slide, and now in combination with the previous, I'm trying to make a point, and have set the stage for a change in thought in chiropractic, which folks may be a bit uncomfortable, at least with strength athletes are concerned. Let's consider, as we go ahead and we look at this in through here, I thought there was a little, here. Is there not a pointer on this, guys? It's a little low. Okay, that's the big deal. You guys can see it. As we go ahead and we take a look at all these things here, these examples, let's consider how many joints, firstly, are getting stretched to their endpoints. The lumbar spine, the thoracic spine, the floating ribs. That's okay. That's fine. Thanks, Doc. That's okay. Thank you very much. So let's go ahead and review again. How many joints are getting stretched? So we've got the lumbar spine and all of its variations of joints. The thoracic spine, along with its ribs, the floating ribs. Let's take a look at the SI joint. Let's consider the acetabulum. Let's consider the knee. And let's go ahead and talk about how many muscles are being stretched. So we go and look at the entire lumbar complex, the thoracolumbar complex, the quadratus lumborum, the abdominals, the multifidi, the rotatories, the hip glute complex, the hamstring, the quads, the adductors. There's more, right? We all know this. We know the anatomy, right? So when we go ahead and we get it to its endpoint, we get it to its stretch max, right? That's what that is. And then we go ahead and apply an impulse. So we've done a static stretch combined with a ballistic stretch. What have I been talking about? Is any of that good for the strength athlete? None of it. Think about all the receptor sites in the ligaments, the tendons, the multi-joint apparatus. We have in our office, we have a term for this. And you guys can use it as well if you'd like to. We call it no bueno. What I've discovered is that with a short lever high velocity thrust application, using the drop table, the athletes are getting off this table an average of 20% stronger. And the adjustment lasts the majority of the time when assessed post-competition, as I've indicated a moment ago, typically after a 5 max effort event, in which many have their personal best in at least one of those events. This has occurred time and time again, and for the last 20 years of my experience in strength sports. And because of that, I've got my own hashtag, StrongmanDoc, and people know me internationally as such. So, the one thing that a lot of us don't do in the profession is challenge our own work. Whether it be through x-ray analysis, which I love to do, love to show that there's been significant change. And a lot of times it's 6 weeks. But I had an opportunity, and this opportunity was really kind of cool. So, wanting to challenge my work and the opportunity, I was able to assess the changes in foot pressures, balance between the feet, and the pre and post effects of my version of chiropractic, realizing a 94.4% relative association and change between the three with 30 seconds of active gait through a plantar surface analysis device. It's pretty cool. Now, did I go ahead and pick all superstar athletes? Nope, I did not. What I went ahead and did was, I went ahead and I took my average people, my people who had feet that were completely fused together, people who had ACL tears, people with right side scoliosis, left side scoliosis, single, double, triple curves, people who had significant short legs, ages. Ages were between 9 and 60. So, did I pick the cream of the crop when I was going and looking to challenge my work? In other words, did I go ahead and stack the deck? No. I took the most god-awful cases I could find and put them in this study, and still ended up with a 94.4% benefit in what we're doing. If you want to look at that study, you can go to inchiropractic.com, because I put it on my website. The neat thing about that is that we all know that the balance is affected. We also know that posture is affected. We know that there's improvement in all these kinds of functions. We put the slides up here. So we know that. The very unusual concept with this was that 30 seconds of active gait on the plantar surface. It's never been done in chiropractic ever. So it was kind of a historic opportunity. It was a really neat opportunity to challenge my work and to have such a high bar set for the profession to go ahead and try to do the same. So, we'll go ahead and continue on here. Now let's go ahead and talk about muscle activation. A lot of chiropractors are doing that right now. I referred to this previously on another slide. In many instances, when it comes to the side posture maneuvers, I like to call this activity muscle reactivation. Without even realizing that there's significant problems for strength athletes in particular, because that's what I'm here to talk about, some chiropractors do realize, however, that the athlete often does feel unstable after a side posture application. My athletes actually call this sensation as being sprung. It was initially coined by a friend of mine who I developed my applications on, who was a professional strongman, that initially asked if I could come up with a way to avoid the issue for strength athletes way back in 1998. It just so happens that that's, right after a lot of the studies were resurgenced, if you will, regarding H reflex or Hoffman's reflex, and the reason why dynamic activities and dynamic warm-ups have replaced both ballistic and static stretches. So anyway, muscle activation is an answer for many DCs, as they often don't realize that they may themselves have been the one that has caused the problem of Hoffman's reflex depression in the first place. Unfortunately, this is similar to trying to put the toothpaste back in the tube. Now, as I go ahead and I share this information during these early hours here, I do need to go ahead and submit that I actually had a young doctor tell me that she could easily put toothpaste back in the tube. So, as I go ahead and tell you these things, and I use that analogy, you can somewhat tell that what I'm talking about and what I'm sharing with you today can really be like a car crash in your brain, okay? And so it's not going to be necessarily automatically accepted. Now that doesn't mean, by the way, okay, with all due respect to all my friends, does not mean that side posture applications are not effective methodology. We've already got the slide at the very beginning that obviously showed that there are benefits. So much so that everybody wants to do it, whether it be an athletic trainer, whether it be a physical therapist, a massage therapist, or whoever. Everybody wants to do it. It's been a staple in chiropractic for generations and is very effective, as many in this audience will attest to. But after literally working on thousands of athletes over these last 20 years, and through numerous discussions with these same athletes, in some instances, the side posture or adjustment should be avoided in the middle of any strength event unless the athlete is finished with competition. Now, this goes back to a point that we all agreed upon. At the same time, this could be said for both controlled static and ballistic stretches following an athletic event. And we all agreed on that. We thought that part was okay. So, technique should be evaluated as we indicated in the slide over here. So these are some of the key points of some of the things that I'm doing. Now, why am I sharing this? Would you believe that I would really like to teach other doctors how to do these applications? And I think, when we go and do this, it's been fascinating to see the reaction. And we have friends in the crowd that actually helped me at the World Strongman Games in North Carolina. And we had a great group of doctors that were there. What we did was we had Dr. Schneider there, who actually is a very accomplished activator doctor. And there were some amazing things that he was able to do doing activator in the middle of the strongman contest. We also had Dr. Scott Rash over here, who's in the front row. And he also is a little bit more like I am. He gets in there, loves the osseous stuff, loves to see those dynamics. And I can't tell you how many times Dr. Scott said, "What the heck did you do? And where did that move come from?" But I think he'll be able to also attest that not only was it strange, but it was strangely effective too. And so, kind of neat stuff. So to recap, my type of chiropractic and its pelvic dynamics are what created the buzz felt in strength sports starting in the late 90s. And for me, it has been the bread and butter at every aspect of what I do and my specific applications. And as stated in the previous slide, Chad Coy, pro strongman, asked me to develop a means to give an adjustment without him feeling sprung as he felt with the popular side posture applications. So with that, I surmise that with the then recent information that really hasn't changed, related to static and ballistic stretching, that we chiropractors were reproducing a similar effect as with the lumbar roll stretch, then creating a ballistic component with the execution of the technique. So even though this is the most used method in chiropractic today, it can be one of the worst things to be done in the middle of strength activity. So I'll let you kind of soak on that just for a little bit. And I'll open up for questions if anybody would like to ask a question. Yes, sir.
What about 24 to 72 hours before an event? Like, if you had enough recovery time,
Yeah.
It just doesn't shut it down and recover, if you're doing the neurological reset and realignment.
See, I like that because you're thinking. You're thinking about it. And you're taking what it is that I've shared with you and then you're applying it. And you're absolutely correct. But here's the thing, okay? It may be different based upon the athlete and the sport and their ability to recover, okay? So say, for example, in the middle of a swimming activity, is side posture a problem? I've not seen it to be. And I work with some of the top, swimming chiropractors in the U.S., and, tied in with USOC. Haven't ever seen it to be a problem. Those athletes, you want them to be as loosey-goosey as you can. But however, if you're going to go ahead and have maximum recruitment effort, if you will, within the structures themselves when it comes to a strength athlete, which includes, your CrossFit athlete, which includes your power lifter, which includes, your strongman athlete, and many others. I actually had a conversation with a doctor who takes care of a lot of track athletes, and he told me, he said, side posture blows them out too. So we just don't have enough research. I'd indicated that, to that point. So you really have to kind of experiment before the athlete gets into competition and see what it does with that athlete in particular. Is that a fair statement? Makes sense too, right? So that way that athlete gets the maximum benefit. And of course, as I said before, you know, those applications, which are a staple in chiropractic, are great after the event is over. And so I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm not saying that 70 years of what we've been doing isn't good stuff. It's just the when, the how, and the who, right? And I think that's fair to say. I saw some other hands. And they disappeared. Did I answer all of that with one question? So, Dr. Scott, did you have any questions that you wanted to toss out there?
I'm a big side posture person. And when we went out there and all we had was the little Thule table, and you have these huge strength athletes, and to be only able to do a lot of the P-Day lateral moves on the drop table, and I'd see these guys and gals come up, and it just amazed me about how specific he was, but how the athletes responded to it. Because I'm used to, okay, if you got a short leg here on the right, let's turn the right up, let's adjust that ilium that way. But the thinking of it is, for these athletes, if you make them too loose and they go out there, then you're potentially setting them up for more of an injury. And but the whole concept behind what he was doing was just, it was really amazing, and we need it more in the profession. And after leaving the event, I started applying some of the principles that he had shown me during the weekend in the office with my regular patients. And I probably cut side posture down probably at least 50% of all the patients that come in. And if they're over 35, I don't even usually do side posture on them anymore. And I still get the same benefits, and it's less strain on me. Using the drops and just thinking of the biomechanics of it was totally amazing. I mean, it flipped me out. And we do need that in the profession. Well, we need to have that set up so that we can have it more the research like you're talking about, so that these docs coming out paying $200,000 or $300,000 for education, they've got something that they're doing, and they're not having to, nothing against all the other therapies and stuff, but they don't have to do all the therapies. What we do works. It just needs to be applied to the environment the people are in. Like the doctors were speaking yesterday with the biomechanics of the person. We're no longer going out having to hunt and to gather and stuff. We're sitting, our posture, our biomechanics have changed. So we need to, in effect, change some of the therapeutic approaches that we do to it, so that we can continue to get the same results in the future population of our patients.
Absolutely.
I don't plan on retiring tomorrow. I want to keep on doing this,
right,
but I have to stay with what changes.
Well, and you take a look, Doc, too, what a lot of people are doing, and how they're, we've got how many colleagues of ours that are almost out of the profession because of a shoulder injury. And, all it takes is one little oops. Now, you've been doing work for, 40 years, and you've been real smart about it because you're still using both those arms and hitting it. And so, but all it takes is one little movement. And, or maybe you decide to be a CrossFit athlete, you wanted to be the guy instead of being, the doctor in this case. So you wanted to be the athlete. And so you go ahead and you go out, you injure yourself, you hurt a wrist, that changes the dynamic of how you're pushing on that patient. Next thing you know, boom, you've blown out your own shoulder. So, I'm just, I'm not necessarily here to say, that I'm all that in a bag of chips. But what I am saying is that the profession itself definitely needs some help. And, I said it before in earlier slides that, we've got all these available things. I mean, we're looking at scope increases in practice here in the U.S. And, what does that mean exactly? Now, I sat down, because I'm president of our state association, the ICA of Indiana, and had an opportunity to go ahead and hammer out, and take out things that basically allowed the schools, the NBCE and the CEE, to dictate in our state what chiropractic was, completely circumventing the legislative process. Dr. Stuckey had something very similar happen here in his state. I mean, that's frightening. Listen, here's the thing. I've got patients that fly from Colorado to my office to get a solid adjustment. Pro top level athletes you see on TV. I got athletes that on average in my facility drive at least 45 minutes to come to my office to get the adjustment that they want. Now, there are a lot of us that have those experiences. And a lot of us feel, like I said, very prideful about that. But the reality is, it's really not about us. It's about the fact that that patient is not finding a solid adjustment. But what they are finding is a great foot massage, a great scaling massage, good scraping, lots of EMS, now dry needling. There's acupuncture. These are all great things. And they're great things to complement what we do. But you know what? What I'm hearing from the patients, okay, and I think many of you guys hear it too. So all I'm doing is echoing. It's an echo chamber of what you guys hear too. The patients want an adjustment. In my office, what do? We adjust. Now, I've had the big fluff and buff clinic a long time ago. And Doc, you did too one time when you were in New York. So we've all done there. We've been there. We've made our fortunes. We've made our money. But at the end of the day, the one thing that separates us from everybody else is the chiropractic adjustment. The adjustment for the subluxation and the subluxation complexes. Do you realize that the ICA is one of the last strongholds, and old guys like us are the last strongholds to subluxation theory? Do you know the ACA right now is taking out subluxation out of all of its literature right now? They've got a brand new marketing group that they're using right now to go ahead and make it appear that they are the premier source for information. The FCLB ties in with that. The state, our opposing state association, used the FCLB as a resource like they were a governing entity. Do you know that's happening? So I've got some ideas, and we were talking about some of these ideas to kind of help change some of those dynamics within our profession as a whole. The profession's in trouble. What are we going to do to fix it? And I'm going to tell you what, my thought process in it, let's just adjust. Let's make that what we do. Let's get rid of that subluxation. Let's take care of those complexes. This stuff works, folks. And you know it. We just have to figure out when, where, who, and how. And I think that's a fair statement. Yes, sir?
Are there instances where you're looking for each reflex in vision?
Like what?
Like if you've got a spasm or a myofunctional restriction?
Well, and I think, I think you'll see that automatically in some instances, don't you? So if you got somebody in pain, and you go ahead and you do an adjustment, a lot of times that is reduced, right? So yeah, it may happen automatically. But what is it? Is it the alteration of subluxation complex? What's the neurodynamics? You're taking pressure off of it, like we talked about. The weight of a dime is all it takes. So is it that, or are we changing the dynamic of the neural fiber, blast, if you will, in response to pain or compression? I don't know. I think that's a good question, and I think that again, if we can figure out research, let's figure out how to do that.
In reference to immediate before competition,
Yes.
would you do a side posture if you were looking for that?
No, I personally would not, and the reason being is because I've been able to go to multi-sports with what I'm doing, and I'm seeing the same kinds of responses, not just in strength athletes. So, it's like anything else. If you find a particular toothpaste that you like that really makes your teeth white, you're going to go back to it, right? So it's the same kind of thing. Back to the toothpaste reference. So a good question. Yes, doctor?
How important is the velocity of the adjustment and not having to take the joint past its normal physiology?
For me, my impression, because I use what I call a short lever high velocity burst application, what I'm trying to do is not only move the joint, but I'm trying to change the neurodynamic. And so in my office, when I have my interns and my residents, I say, okay, listen, here's what it is. It's not it's a, how fast can you get it in there? I think that's absolutely right. That's what I've seen too. So when you get in there and you make that movement, it's got to be quick. So get out your toggle boards if you're a little slow, right? I think that's important. No, that's a very good statement right there. Yes, sir.
So from a sports chiropractic standpoint, the athlete is interested in performance enhancement that's legal on the drug.
Right.
So if you could do a chiropractic adjustment, gave you 20% increase in power rather than a temporary 20% decrease in power based upon the technique, what, not being political, but what things that are appropriate in increasing the power at that performance time that doesn't give them the negative chiropractic adjustment effects of being sprung. For example, activator, is that okay? It doesn't, it improves them and not temporarily decreases the strength. Drop table Thompson work, Thule, different things like that are okay. Side posture temporarily sprigs them. You would want to do that like more in their training period and let them recover, because you might be able to free up adhesions in the joint still.
Yes, sir.
What things would be okay at the time? Is activator okay?
Yeah, I think you're right on it. I mean, the thing that was really interesting is, like I said before, when we were at the World Strongman Games, we actually had Dr. Bruce Schneider down there, who is a very accomplished activator, a doctor. We obviously know that the neurodynamic is changed through activator applications. The funny thing is, though, is that some of those tests that he would go ahead and process through, and again, he's been doing this a long time, he's really talented at it, and we saw some really cool things, is that sometimes the feedback was weird. He said, this isn't really applying like it should be. And I think Dr. Over here also said the same thing. It's like, well, this really isn't fitting the norm. Well, you got to look at damage to the articulations, as indicated in the previous slides in through here, damage to the articulations, and the fact that they've trained around deficits to a level that they are a national, in our instance, a national competitor, right? So they've superseded so many things. So the reality, if you really look at it, is like, okay, so how does it, is it really going to fit the norm? It's not. So we as the doctor have to really adapt. And so when we're, I'm out on the table here, you're adapting quick, and I think Doc can attest to that. We adapt rather quickly. But to your point, yeah, I think that there needs to be research. And again, I had another slide in here to show how chiropractic applications, when applied, and show how those are affecting particular sports applications. Sean Drake, who was over at Life West, who does the DO Games, or DO Games, X Games, ties in with US OC. It's funny because, you get he and I together and we start talking about that. It's so true. There's some things with certain sports that you just really shouldn't do as a chiropractor, as far as applications. But sometimes you need the osseous stuff, and sometimes you need the finesse of some of the neurodynamics. So there's a place with all of it, which I think is a good thing, And it also, at the same time, if we chiropractors can just get out our own road, we might be able to actually work together during a sporting event, bringing several different types of applications, just like we did. So we're going to World Strongman Games down in North Carolina again later this fall, maybe even early winter. And I'm excited to work with the docs again. It's great, and we'll be bringing the same team. And hopefully, we'll actually have more chiropractors there. And so for me, I can't treat anybody in North Carolina because I don't have a license. I don't go to jail. right? So I get to be the supervising doc. So I'm actually able to kind of step back and say, okay, this is some of the things that you need to do, like what we did, kind of say, here's a little additional, but then also open up the other stuff. So, but I think you've got it in your head, you've got the right space. And that's all I wanted to do today, was to kind of get people to think that way. You know what I mean? So, any other questions? Yes, sir.
So I'm a student at Palmer right now. So what would you?
Which one?
Davenport.
Davenport. All right, the real Palmer, right?
Yeah.
I said that out loud. That's not politically correct now, is it? All right. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
What would you suggest as a student going into second try
Okay.
to do as far as or focus on technique wise or extracurricular?
Well, you're probably are you guys don't do any really even palpation till what, after third try now?
We have a palpation class starting second try.
Okay, second try. So technique starts. You do. Is Dr. Beauvais still there? Okay, so you'll be doing thoracolumbar dynamics. Really pay attention to that.
Okay.
I mean, don't blow that off. That's very important. The other thing too is, not to necessarily get in the weeds, but as far as spinal radiographic interpretation, get good at it. No, don't get good at it. Be great at it. Because I'm going to tell you what. That's one of the big things that makes me different from the majority of my clients. And on average, the patients that come in and see me, they've already been to 4 different chiropractors. So as a student, you're probably thinking, I want to be one of the 4 guys that failed before it gets to Dr. Top, right? So be very, very good at it and be able to interpret it. Clinical case correlation is huge in that, okay? To kind of add to that point, do an exam, do a great exam. They're going to kind of give you a lot, maybe to some degree too much when you're going through your diagnostic and when you get into the student clinic. And they're going to blast you with a lot of things. So you're going to be feeling for pulsations in stomachs and who knows what, okay? Palmer's changed as well, okay? So there's going to be a lot of things that they're going to throw into the mix here. But be good at your palpation skills. Be great at Gonstead line analysis. A lot of people think it's archaic. I've talked to motion palpation instructors before, and they flat out told me, I dropped that stuff years ago. Is that why I have patients come in pain to my office, take an x-ray and find that they have a rotation in their lumbar spine at L1 that makes it look like it's pointing sideways, like on a lateral view, and then we're surprised that patient has numbing and tingling legs at that 56-degree angulation? Do you know where they give the epidural shot? For women? About that area. And what's it do? Makes everything dead from here down, right? X-rays. Be good at it. It's hard to believe that you can go through all chiropractic school, get to your national boards, and not know how to do a Cobb angle. And I'm going to tell you, in the field, there are a lot of chiropractors out there who, and I caught one of them, because he posted something on Facebook, and he said, hey, just with 2 weeks of adjustments, I've actually taken this curve and dropped it 10 degrees. And then he posted the before and after. He changed his Cobb angle lines. Okay. I mean, it's okay to be excited when you do good work. It's another thing to go ahead and not know how to do a Cobb angle line and then put it on social media so everyone knows that you don't know how to do a Cobb angle line. Right? So you kind of getting what I'm, throwing on the wall here, it's got to stick. So motion palpation is great. Make sure you learn how to do the line analysis. Make sure you understand conceptually how to bring them both together, and then deliver the best adjustment on the planet. Because it's all got to go together. If any portion of that is missing, you're going to suck as a chiropractor. It's scary, isn't it? Yeah, got somebody, yes, sir.
You just quickly walk us through your technique.
Yeah, you know what, I'm glad you asked that, because what time is it? I missed the clock. Is it really? Well, you know what's going to be fun about that? We'll go ahead and do that. So, anyway, anytime you go ahead and you have somebody do something, you know, it's always a good idea to make sure that they fill out the paperwork, right? Even an event like this. And one of the things that I want to make sure that we do is make sure as time goes on that maybe we can come up with our own version of a travel and treat document that kind of encompasses enough things that make a lot of sense. You know, there really isn't a standardized travel and treat document by any association. So that's one of the things that, you know, being part of the sports council, I want to go ahead and try and see. The other thing is you know, relying on, you know, the ACA focused FCLB, which is